Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, January 3rd, 2024. Happy New Year. Welcome to How the Frack We Got Here, the show that goes everything and tries to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. Of course, we do try to do our best on How the Frack Got Here. We do take our sources from the most reputable news sources around with award-winning journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News or Newsmax or The Blaze, whatever extreme right that you follow. We simply do not do that. We give you just the facts, nothing but the facts. On top of that, we do try to watch our language. Sometimes words do fly. We apologize. Sometimes maybe things that might be shown that might be too young for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So unless you were watching Cat Williams' podcast with Shannon Sharp, which is going to be my bingo card 2024, I had to pull myself away from it. We do have some news starting off this time with the Democrats, especially with one Bob Menendez, who can't seem to keep himself from being a compromised politician, which I know is pretty much normal.
Clearly know him.
Yeah,
what do you make of this? I mean, a watch, the price of
look, he's
if the allegations are true, the price of bribing somebody.
Anderson, when I was U.S. attorney for 7 years in New Jersey, the one of the things that shocked me the most was how cheaply you could buy a politician. I mean, $5,000 in cash in an envelope could get most elected officials.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was amazing to me when the FBI would say to me, "Let's start with $5,000." I'd say, Who would throw their whole life away for $5,000? Yeah. Oh, yeah, no. So you look at Bob Menendez, let's make this clear. He has been a completely unethical, unprincipled politician for the entire time I've known him. And I've known him now for over 20 years. He's never had any principles. Think about what he said after he got a hung jury in the last trial. He went out and said, I know all the people who are out there trying to dig my political grave, and I know who you are, and I'll remember. I mean, this is a guy who wasn't grateful over the fact that he had just dodged a bullet. And his conduct afterwards indicates that's exactly what he meant, because he went right back to, according to the indictment, committing crimes and selling out this country as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Look, the thing I'm disappointed about in the Democratic Party is, at least the Republicans removed George Santos. Where are the Democrats in the United States Senate with removing this guy? This is now a second superseding indictment. So it's a third set of charges where he was using his position of leadership and intelligence information in the United States Senate to enrich himself and his wife. I don't understand how Chuck Schumer can't go to Mitch McConnell right now and say, look, we need to have a vote to kick him out, because to have him in.
Okay, let's just stop Chris Christie right there for just 1 second. I'm not one to sit there and say hypocrite much, because yes, the Republicans did kick out George Santos after an ethical review. After it took mostly Democrats along with some Republicans, to finally kick him out of office. Once we got past all those hurdles, sure, George Santos was gone. But Bob Menendez, for all those that don't know, a guy who's on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has been allegedly accused of taking bribes of money, of cars. His wife also taking certain bribes as well. Which again, it's funny how they sit there and say, how cheaply it is to buy a politician. Well, obviously, because if you throw enough money at them, you can do whatever you want, which is why some people have that type of opinion of politics. But what I don't get about the former governor, Chris Christie, is that you're saying the Democrats aren't acting fast enough. Give him the same thing you gave that guy who lied about his religion, lied about where he worked, lied about where he went to school, decide to use his campaign funds as his own personal piggy bank, you let that man ride all the way to the end. And only then, when the ethical review came out and said, yes, he is guilty of all these things, that your party still didn't want to vote him out. It took the Democrats to bring up the motion to vote. And even then, a good number of Republicans still did not want to vote Santos out. What does that say about your party? Now, again, I am talking about the Democrats. Yes, they will still do the ethical review. Yes, they will still probably vote Menendez out. He may face bribery charges. He may face some criminal charges. But at the same time, I just find it interesting that one side, whose politicians are usually in hot water because, party of family values and all that, usually caught with an LGBTQ plus member, usually caught with a mistress with baby, or how does it usually go on the bingo card? LGBTQ plus member, mistress with baby, housemaid who becomes mistress who has baby. So then, you kind of go down that entire list, but that's usually the Republican Party. Yes, the Democrats are not innocent angels themselves, but give them the same procedure that you decided to give Santos, because he was the same guy not too long ago saying, well, we just need to wait for the ethical review to come out. We don't want to remove someone immediately. We don't want to remove someone just for a knee-jerk reaction. But you're expecting Democrats to turn around and do the same thing. And Menendez still has not had his day in court. Like I said, hypocrites usually show themselves out. But Chris Christie, hey, you're not going to be a president. You're not going to be the president, the Republican presidential nominee. So I guess you're going to go back to what you usually do. Basically get paid for just talking out your ass. But we'll follow that case as it goes along, because it will be an interesting case. Moving right along, guys. This is actually good news, and I want to get to this very quickly. Most Americans, especially if you're of the diabetic kind, will be experiencing some savings in medical care, as the insulin price cap for $35 is actually spreading. Novolog, as you see there in the picture, will also begin their insulin price caps at $35. Now, keep in mind, we were covering this story a little over a year ago, where again, the price of insulin, life-saving medication, those that are diabetic absolutely need this to live. And the price of insulin, along with other life-saving medications, was high. A lot of people had to decide whether, do I want medication, or should I pay the rent, or should I pay utilities, or should I do this? It got to the point to where some diabetic users were rationing, something that physicians immediately advise against. No diabetic on insulin should ever ration themselves, because again, that could lead to complications and even include death in some areas if your blood sugar spikes too high or your blood sugar is too low. It makes sense that the simple fact of the matter is that I've said this before this podcast, so I'll say it again. It makes no sense that life-saving medication should be at such a high profit. You would think if you need this to live, it should be at a price to where anyone can afford. Now, is $35 a little high? Yes, to a certain extent. I'll still argue $35 is high, just because everything has gone up but your paycheck. But at least there is some movement in the drug market. Now, again, I know it's insulin. We can go about inhalers for asthma. We can go about blood pressure medication for those that have hypertension, high blood pressure, those that need medication for their heart, their lungs. I can keep going down the list. Let's just say life-saving medication as a whole needs to come down in price. And again, this kind of goes back to the U.S. healthcare system. As I've said many times on the show, the U.S. healthcare system is for profit, and that is the problem. Especially when you have now four healthcare companies that literally control the U.S. So if you're an American citizen, chances are you're under one of the big four. At the same time, they decide the prices. It always kills when they say, "But we don't decide the prices." Yes, you do. You decide the prices, you decide the cost of care, you decide all of the above. You are literally the death squads that people were told were going to happen under a black man as president. Who knew the death squads were already there before we had a black president? But again, I digress. It is a good thing that the capital insulin prices is happening. I will be happy about that. Does more need to be done? Absolutely. But at least there is some good parts out of that. But I digress. But moving right along, guys. I know you've heard me say that Governor Chris Christie is not going to. Oh, hey, Kira! Can you imagine if pharmaceutical companies got paid based on tips from consumers? Shh. If pharmaceutical companies got paid based on tips from consumers, it would be what Circuit City was before Amazon showed up. You would see tumbleweeds going all over. A building what used to be popular is now gone. That's what it will be. Because pharmaceutical companies, really quick, guys, pharmaceutical companies pretty much can, and again, these are pharmaceutical companies that get government funding. Very few pharmaceutical companies are really funded by themselves. Most of them get government funding for the medicines that they look into, that they develop, that they test, that they have these groups. They get government funding. And it always bothered me that how is it that you get government funding, but you can still set the price on what you sell? If you get government funding, to me, it's like you don't have a say in what you sell to the American people. You took federal dollars to develop this. This is why I always sit there and said about the coronavirus vaccines. Again, those were federally funded projects, and they had the nerve to charge people for vaccines. Again, something that you need because we've noticed that corona does kill. And yet they want to charge for vaccines. So yes, here I'll be honest. If pharmaceutical companies worked off the tips, they wouldn't survive. It's the same way as saying, let's put politicians work. If you had the ability, I'll put it this way: putting pharmaceutical companies to be paid based on tips from consumers would be the same thing as politicians working on minimum wage. Watch how quickly they change their rate. That is all I'm saying. But I wanted to cover this as well, guys, because like I said, I talked about Governor Chris Christie, who is not going to make the Iowa caucus, which is pretty much the last stop before we decide. Well, not us, because unless you're voting GOP, unless you're an old white guy, or a confused white woman, or a really confused person of color, and then you have the other people that just want to be different, I guess. But for all those that wanted to vote for the GOP, you're going to get your last shot. The Idaho debate is coming up. Governor Chris Christie obviously has stepped down, but then again, he didn't have a shot anyway. Neither did America's creepiest Christian. Try saying that 5 times fast. Mike Pence didn't have a shot, and yet he bowed out. America's Uncle Tom, Tim Scott, the only black man in the Republican Party, he bowed out. And, they keep dropping. So we're now, and Vivek Ramaswamy, which we'll get to very soon, has yet to qualify. So again, we're back down, and I hate to say it, to this point, we are now down to the big 3. And yes, this man, who literally, this is why I say we should be a little bit concerned, because Trump has turned around and sit there and said that he is going to attend the Iowa debate. Trump, who hasn't attended a debate the entire time, is now going to be attending the last debate in Iowa. And again, this is a man who, as of right now, this man is leading by double digits in the polls. The person next to him, Nikki Haley, that is not her real name, by the way. And the person next to him, which I would consider the evolved version of Trump minus Botox and white privilege hasn't killed him yet. Governor dictator Ron DeSantis, who again, between him and Nikki Haley, are fighting for second place. This is the GOP's fear that Trump, a man who is under multiple indictments, multiple court cases, could somehow, some way, without saying a one single word in a debate, could possibly win the Republican nomination. And that's a scary part. But when you think about it, and I say this, and I say this all the time, and I say this very far. Hey, Tafari, governor, dictator, yeah, that too. And you would, like I said, for all those in Florida, I do apologize because I know that's something you got to deal with, but that's some, yeah. That pendejo. But But here's the problem, because people going, well, Trump has all this going for him. He's got this, he's got his cult. Yes, he does got his cult. But here's the problem. If you are a presidential candidate, you expect to get a lot of questions. You expect to be able to answer questions, maybe even pivot some, because you might not like to give the answer that the crowd around you may not want to hear. Nikki Haley had that problem, and I pretty much believe this is what's going to basically cost the Republican nomination for her. It is a volleyball of a question. Watch this woman just watch.
Cause of the United States Civil War.
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was? I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I want to see your view on the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government. What do you want me to say about slavery? Next question.
But it's not the first time that she's made.
Ma'am. See, this is why I say education is so vital. Nikki Haley, Republican presidential candidate. Nikki Haley, question. So, what was the reason behind the Civil War? You want me to answer that question? Yes. Well, Well, what should I say? If I was Nikki Haley's campaign manager, this would be me in the background. We're done. That's it. We're done. Turn off the lights, cancel Christmas. This woman can't even answer a history question. Why? Because and I understand. And the people going, well, I mean, it's so easy. Yes, it is. But understand where Nikki Haley is. She is surrounded by conservatives. Conservatives who literally and figuratively choose to rewrite history to whatever rebel flag, banjo, kissing cousin they want to go with. Nikki Haley had a softball of a question. What was the reason behind the Civil War? You can say slavery, because that's what we were taught. We were taught that in elementary school. Elementary school, you got the watered down version. It's because of slavery. As you grew older and you were able to do your own research, you found out that the Civil War was not based on slavery. Again, easy question. But think about this. An easy question tripped up a Republican candidate to where now she's on damage control.
The Civil War was about slavery, but then she said this. She was talking about what it means today, and she says it's about freedom and individual rights. I think we have that sound, so I'm going to let you listen to it.
Well, two things on this, Jack. I mean, of course, the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's the easy part of it. What I was saying was, what does it mean to us today? What it means to us today is about freedom. That's what that was all about. It was about individual freedom. It was about economic freedom. It was about individual rights. Our goal is to make sure, no, we never go back to the stain of slavery, but what's the lesson in all of that?
Okay, so doing a bit of cleanup.
See, what that is right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a PR spin if you could do a Hail Mary of one. Because, it's about, of course it was slavery, but it was also about economic freedom. No, because if you've ever looked up the Confederacy articles, if you've ever looked up where the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, had sat there and said in his speech when they decided to raise their banner, so to speak, it wasn't about economic freedom. They simply put didn't want to pay Black people because they saw Black people as property. And in some areas, especially in 2024, some of them still do see us as property. That's the reason why. Every war has always been about money. Let's just call it what it is. Every war has been about money. But Nikki Haley had a literal pop-up question that should have been easy to answer. But it's funny when she says, well, what does that mean about what does slavery mean about us today? Ooh, the civics question you just opened up, but you won't talk about. Because nothing makes a bunch of napkins more uncomfortable than talking about what their ancestors might have done to Black people. Hence, why they're trying to rewrite the history books. Because you have some grandparents now who used to be a part of that crowd that now have grandchildren who can read and may research and may ask Daddy, why did you decide to hose down Black people? Again, this is the heritage that they try to protect. Nikki Haley fumbled, and at the same time, she may have turned around and cost herself the presidency. And don't think for 1 second in Iowa that DeSantis, that Trump won't bring that up. And it will be, and she will have a hard time backpedaling out of all of it. But again, everybody's got something, even Trump, because now Trump has a little bit of a problem. And what the little bit of a problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is that, well, he is slowly getting removed from states. We've seen a week before Christmas, Colorado did remove him from the ballot, saying that he violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And now another state recently has joined the fray, Maine.
Contributor and assistant dean at Yale Jackson School of Global Affairs, Asha Rangappa. Asha, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, let's talk about it. Maine's Secretary of State Chenna Bellows ruled to suspend the effect of her decision until Maine's Superior Court rules on any appeal. Why the pause on her ruling?
There's a pause because this is a question that is going to have to go to the Supreme Court. You know, unlike the other eligibility requirements for president, things like age and place of birth and residency, which are just objectively verifiable, whether someone engaged in an insurrection is a question of fact for a person to determine based on the events of January 6th. And the only body that can really make this in a way that has finality and that will be uniform across the country is the Supreme Court. And I assume that the pause is basically recognizing that reality.
All right, Asha, here's how she defended her ruling during an interview on CNN. Let's take a listen.
No Secretary of State has ever deprived a presidential candidate of ballot access based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But no presidential candidate has ever engaged in insurrection.
All right, Asha, so Trump is being prosecuted for his role in the January 6th insurrection. Until we have a ruling from the court, who has the authority to decide whether or not Trump should be removed from ballots?
Well, the Constitution leaves the time, place, and manner of elections to the states. And what we're seeing is different states have different procedures for contesting a person's eligibility for being on that state's ballot. We saw the Colorado court had a bench trial. Here, there was an administrative hearing in front of the Secretary of State. And so, you know, there's all of these different ways. And ultimately, though, as I mentioned before, I think what we are going to be facing is the problem of a lack of uniformity in terms of the determination of whether Trump meets these basic constitutional eligibility requirements that in every other case would be uncontestable. Age, you know, we look at someone's birth certificate, but here I think that, you know, to get that consensus, we would need a final court determination.
All right, so Maine is the second state now to decide Trump is ineligible to be president, and it seems inevitable that these challenges will go to the Supreme Court. What should we watch out for?
This is going to be, I think, probably the most controversial decision that the Supreme Court is going to hand down. I don't think that they are going to be able to evade the difficult question that now Colorado and Maine have both addressed, which is, does Section 3 of the 14th Amendment as a legal matter apply to a former president? And if so, does his actions on January 6th meet the definition? And they're going to have to make that. And I don't know that they're going to make anyone happy unless they find some sort of, procedural off-ramp that allows them to basically make a decision without addressing that direct question.
So what's interesting about this, guys, and I want to point this out here for a second, that, a lot of people are going to argue this, that, oh, how dare Colorado decide to take Trump off the ballot? This is the same party, and I want to stress very heavily about the GOP. The GOP, their big thing is, we don't want government taking over everything. That's their big thing. We don't want government involved. We want the states to take over and take care of themselves. We want the states to exercise their own rights. Okay, cool. Colorado did it. Colorado turned around and sat there and said, yes, based on the evidence, Trump has violated the 14th Amendment, which, for all those that don't know, quick civics lesson, 14th Amendment means that if you in some way try to hinder government operations or cause an insurrection, it disqualifies you from being president. Pretty much, I'm paraphrasing. Colorado has decided that, yes, because of the obvious evidence that's out there on Trump, that Trump did violate the 14th Amendment, and therefore he is off the ballot in Colorado. Maine, at this point, decided that until it is heard by their state Supreme Court. Now, a lot of people, you're probably wondering, well, what does this mean? Well, if you really think about it, it could be a chain reaction. Here's what I want to point out, and I just want to do this very quickly because I want to do a side-by-side so that way you guys will get where I'm coming from. So, apologize for the darkness, but I had to pause it mid-view because this right now, I want to show this. This right now, of course, is the U.S. The red states are the states that have decisions on hold pending appeals. Now, imagine this, if you will. Here's how Trump can literally not be president, simply put, because let's just say if Colorado, Maine, Ohio, Michigan, Montana, Oregon, Washington, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and just for giggles, I know it's an impossibility, but let's also say New York decided to all put Trump off the ballot. Now, why did I say those states in particular? I said those states in particular because those states literally have some of the biggest electoral college votes. Now, keep in mind, for you to get the presidency, it's 270 votes in the electoral college. If states who, by any chance, may be Democratic, may all follow suit with Colorado and Maine and decide to take Trump off their ballots, which means that he is not eligible for presidency in those states, Trump would have a very, very, very hard time. Now, if all Democratic states decide to bump Trump, could he still be president? Yes, there are still some states out there that if they didn't decide to bump him off, that actually had a larger count of electoral college votes, he could still run and possibly still win. Could he win without Colorado and Maine? Yes, but imagine the turnstile that would happen if all those states decided we want to exercise states' rights and pull Trump off the ballot. I can hear those folks at Fox News now. How dare those states? They're being renegade. They're doing this. What are they doing exactly? The one thing that you and every one of those crazy folks were harping about. You wanted states to exercise their own right. 2 states did, and y'all are complaining, which tells me the whole thing about states' rights is some bull. Completely and truly and totally. But again, we will see, because right now Trump's got 2 states. He's got multiple lawsuits. It's 2024. The man is somehow still not in jail. I'm just as confused as the rest of y'all, because as long as that man is not in jail, there is a chance he could get the Republican nomination. Really good. But we cannot forget about Vivek Ramaswamy, because as of right now, he has not qualified per se for the Iowa caucus, but yet he's still there.
The Iowa caucus is now less than 2 weeks away. Vivek Ramaswamy is making clear how important the Hawkeye state is to his campaign. The Republican candidate is completing his second full Grassley today. That means he'll have visited all 99 counties in Iowa twice. Ramaswamy is the only GOP candidate on the campaign trail in Iowa today. Ron DeSantis hits the Hawkeye state tomorrow. Iowa could be a do-or-die contest for him, too. He spent New Year's Eve and New Year's Day campaigning in state. Nikki Haley, meanwhile, will hold a town hall this evening in New Hampshire, state she's made one of, if not her key focus in her campaign. It's also a state in which about 40% of the electorate is undeclared, not a member of any political party. Haley, Ramaswamy, and DeSantis are all scrambling to make this primary contest into an actual contest against frontrunner Donald Trump.
And good luck with that. Because, again, like I said, Vivek Ramaswamy still has yet to qualify for the Iowa caucus. Nikki Haley is backpedaling because she can't answer a U.S. history question. And, of course, Trump is trying his hardest to stay on ballots. And that's just a Republican nomination. We don't even got to the Democratic nomination yet, where Cornel West is trying to run, Bernie Sanders is trying to run, Joe Biden believes he can run. We hadn't even gotten the Democrats yet, and that's going to be a race in itself. But again, I digress. It's interesting. It's weird. It's, Don King said it best. Only in America. Truly, truly only in America. But all this is sad news, guys. Unfortunately, Harvard President Claudine Gay is stepping down. Unfortunately, due to attacks about Hamas on her campus, plagiarism. The second woman of this prestigious college, especially being a Black woman, has announced that she will step down.
Lee Stefanik, who was at that hearing on Capitol Hill about anti-Semitism on campus and pressed those three presidents, including Claudine Gay. She says, "I will always deliver results." She calls Gay's resignation long overdue. She says that she was devoid of the moral leadership and academic integrity required of the president of Harvard. What's your reaction to today's resignation and these comments coming from the Congresswoman?
Look, I think Elise Stefanik should be ashamed of herself, because I don't think she actually cares about any of these things that she talked about on Capitol Hill. I don't think she cares about anti-Semitism. I don't think she cares about academic freedom. I don't think she cares about any of these things that she pressed on. She cared about winning political points. And I think that political attacks on universities are things that we should all be frightened by, regardless of our politics, whether we're on the left or the right. And I'm sad for American universities because of that. And I'm sad for Claudine Gay, because I think she was a capable leader that was facing an extremely difficult situation. And people like Elise Stefanik were not helping it at all.
Professor, let's say even if everything that you said is true, potentially true here, when you look at the writings, and I mean, is that something you would have done? In the way you write, would you do what Claudine Gay would have done and expect to keep your job? Because that is also another element here.
You're talking about the allegations of plagiarism?
I'm saying you've seen, right? You've compared, I'm sure, as you've gone through the writing here to, and maybe it isn't stealing research, which would be a huge crime in academia, of course. But in terms of writing an essay, this is nothing that you would accept from a college student. For instance, they know not to do this. So that's what I'm asking about.
If a college student did that, what I would expect is I would expect a careful and deliberate hearing to understand whether they violated rules. And I think if I saw that, I'd be concerned, and I would bring it up at Harvard, for example, to a academic board that would determine whether or not they violated the rules. What happened?
So really, just not to cut him off, but to really, that's the part where I'm bugged out. Like I said, this Claudine Gay, again, the second woman being president of Harvard University, the first Black woman of Harvard University, Harvard University. Unfortunately, we'll have the shortest tenure on record there. Do I think, for example, I mean, and I get it, for things that happen when you're the head of the table and things happen under your watch, that yes, that maybe stepping down is the right thing to do. Tell that to Wells Fargo, because that bank has done so much slanderous stuff, and they've only changed CEOs twice. But I digress. But again, with all that going on, it is sad to see someone raise that level. And of course, with the anti-Semitism going on between the Israeli and attacks and things of that nature, and now plagiarism is now being investigated at this school. It's just the fact that, do I think that it should have been better for her to weather the storm and to really show her leadership and to show that she can get all these things under control? I believe so. I'm one of those, I'm sorry, I'm one of those guys to where if it happens and you're not given the opportunity to handle it properly, then it's more of a knee-jerk reaction. You know, you're just trying to save face. You're trying to say, here's what we've done. We've gotten rid of the head person when this all happened. It doesn't really do anything. It's all just for show. Whereas I would have hoped she would have stayed there and really just been transparent about either new policies or things of that nature. I just wish she stayed there, because for me, I would rather see how she handles that versus just leaving. Because when you leave, it's almost like saying, okay, I'm leaving because I was told, or I'm leaving because, you know, I don't want the headache. I don't want the whatever comes with it. But again, to me, I just wish that she stayed and could have shown leadership, could have shown what she could have done in the middle of that. Because 9 times out of 10, anybody else would have. 9 times out of 10, if it wasn't a black person, they would have already been in there and trying to solve it. Let's just be honest. Versus a black person, because, you know, we kind of get graded twice as hard for the same mean shit. But anyway, leave it at that. So I know we talked about 2024, guys. Look, our 2023 bingo card was really thrown away by mid-year. We're already starting 2024 again, and I don't mean to point this out. If you haven't seen Cat Williams' interview with Shannon Sharp, recommend that you do, because that's going to be one. Here's number 2 of the bingo card that a lot of people, mostly those associated with the 2 words that, again, were said a lot during last year, are going to be pretty nervous, because now that certain file has now went public.
Tonight in New York City, a federal judge ordering the unsealing of documents expected to reveal the names of dozens of Jeffrey Epstein's associates. The documents are part of Virginia Giuffre's settled lawsuit against Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Giuffre claimed she was sexually abused and trafficked by Epstein with help from Maxwell. More than 150 names are set to be made public the first week of January, including, authorities say, alleged co-conspirators. The Jeffrey Epstein case.
Ooh, what do you say, Kira? Baby, the tea, she is hot, as she should. I'm not going to argue that, as she should. But again, this was not on my bingo card. Jeffrey Epstein, a man who, you know, whether you believe having that jail cell happened to him that made him alive, well, the list of associates is now public. And what I mean public is, if you go to ABC or NBC News or CBS News, there's a certain link that takes to the file to where hundreds of court filings to where Jeffrey to associates that of Jeffrey Epstein are now out for the world. Now, the reason why we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, a man who may or may not have had certain parties on certain island with certain company that is kind of frowned upon everywhere, and that certain individuals may have enjoyed it. That's the best way I can say it without getting banned. But the fact of the matter is, Jeffrey Epstein was at the time a rich and influential man who had a lot of associates. Now those associates' names are being made public. All I can sit there and say is, and I'm just being honest with you guys, if your favorite celebrity or politician decides to leave the country with an assload amount of money, suspect. That's all I'm saying. But like I said, bingo card 2024, click, already punched that hole. We'll see where that goes from there. But as we move right along, guys, I got a story that just whenever it comes to law enforcement, I know this is about to get heavy. But every time we see stories like this, I have to ask the question, what is different? And I'll start with the first one. Imagine you are an armed suspect going into the Colorado Supreme Court area with a hostage who is unarmed, and you're taken in alive. That is not your latest. NYPD or Law and Order episode. That actually happened.
A shooting at a Colorado courthouse, an intruder opening fire on the building early this morning in Denver. The suspect entered the courthouse holding an unarmed security guard at gunpoint. That suspect taken into custody now, and police are investigating a motive. Our Mola Lenghi is in Denver for us. So Mola, what do we know about how this all started and how police ultimately were able to arrest the suspect?
Well, yeah, Kira, police say the incident began just after 1 a.m. when this suspect was involved in a car crash just outside of the Colorado Supreme Court building in downtown Denver. They say once that car crash sort of took place, the suspect got out of the car, pointed a gun at the other driver who was involved in the car crash, then turned his attention towards the Supreme Court building, shooting out a window of the Supreme Court building that was nearby. That gave him access to the building. Once he was inside, police say he encountered an unarmed security guard, held him at gunpoint, demanding access to other parts of the Supreme Court building, taking that security guard's keys, and eventually making his way to the 7th floor of the Supreme Court building. Now, while this was happening, authorities say police were responding to the scene. They were setting up a perimeter around the building, outside of the building. Police say the suspect then began firing shots from inside the building at the officers who were outside. Authorities say none of their officers were hit, but this led to a several hours long standoff between the suspect who was inside and the officers who were outside. This lasted about 2 hours, and authorities say that finally ended when the suspect around 3 a.m. called 911 and agreed to give himself up to authorities. They took him into custody at that point.
So would spend, what, nearly 2 weeks now since the Colorado Supreme Court ruled to remove former President Donald Trump from the ballot. Do you know if this attack was connected to recent threats in any way against the Supreme Court justices there?
Well, as you said, Kira, it's been a couple of weeks. There have been multiple threats made against Colorado Supreme Court justices since that ruling came down several weeks ago. At this point in the investigation to this early morning's incident, authorities are saying preliminary investigations confirm a high probability that this incident is not associated to any of those recent threats against Colorado Supreme Court justices. So at this point, it does not look like it had anything to do with that recent ruling. It does not seem to be associated anyway with these recent threats. But again, authorities are still investigating a motive to why this suspect allegedly broke into the Supreme Court building.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second here. I'm not saying that Jones doesn't have a point. Let's kind of break it down again, shall we? A wreck happens outside of the Colorado Supreme Court building. Suspect is armed. Suspect shoots out window. Suspect takes unarmed guard. Suspect takes unarmed guard's keys, heads to 7th floor. Police arrive to do a perimeter. Suspect fires at police. Suspect has a standoff. Suspect calls 911 to give himself up. Suspect is taken into custody alive. This man took a hostage, fired rounds at windows, fired rounds at cops, had a standoff, taken it alive. Now you're probably wondering where I'm going with this. Outside of the fact they're trying not to sit there and say, this is just weeks after the Colorado Supreme Court decided that to uphold the decision to ban Trump off the ballot. I'm sure that it has nothing to do with that individual deciding to go into that building just on happenstance as we wait for his manifesto and his medical pictures of Trump inside of his basement. I mean, we don't know yet, but I'm just spitballing here. But again, you just heard me just name off the fact that an armed suspect shot at cops, took it hostage, and was taken in alive. Okay? Let me explain the other situation. You call 911 for a domestic violence situation, and you're holding a knife that you fear that the person in the room will harm your child. Police come in and shoot you in the back as you show no threat to them. Tell me again, what's the difference?
Facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit after a woman was shot to death by officers who were responding to a call she made for help. ABC's Derek Dennis has details.
This morning, a plea for justice in the death of 27-year-old Neani Finlayson. At a vigil over the weekend, friends and relatives mourning her loss after she was shot and killed in a confrontation with Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies earlier this month. Deputies responding to Finlayson's home on a domestic violence call say they encountered her holding a large knife and threatening to stab her ex-boyfriend for pushing her daughter. Police claim they shot Finlayson to stop her from harming the man.
4 shots in the back. It's ridiculous. Where are the training for these officers?
My heart is so broken. I hate it for her children. I hate it. It's devastating.
Finlayson's family disagreeing with the deputy's account of what happened and filing a $30 million lawsuit against the department and the county. Finlayson's lawyer says she was not a threat and only had the knife to protect her and her daughter from her ex-boyfriend.
Officers should be trained that they are not supposed to shoot and kill when they don't know who's there or what the surroundings are.
The sheriff's department says the shooting is under investigation.
Sometimes you just can't cry enough. It will never bring her back. But justice has to stand.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says it has not officially received the family's lawsuit claim, but say they will release the body camera footage of the incident next week.
Yes, after they've turned around.
Now,
that they turned around and made sure that, we have to make sure that we haven't screwed up at all. This is the point I'm making, guys, because, again, I'm just doing a tale of two stories and how officers reacted. A man in Colorado, armed, took a hostage, shot at cops, taken it alive. A woman who called 911 out of threat to her and her child, armed herself to protect her child. Sheriff showed up, shot the woman in the back 4 times. What's the difference? That's the question I'm asking. Because, again, for all those that don't know, we're F the police here at How the Frack We Got Here. We've always been that way because we've sat there and said law enforcement needs to be reformed, that officers need to be trained better, that there needs to be a standard held for law enforcement officers, that the simple fact of the matter is they have quantitative immunity. Officers don't immediately have to give a statement until 48 hours later. Officers can literally have all of this weaponry at their hands. I'm talking about the fact of the matter, they have bulletproof vests, they have tasers, they have mace, they showed up with backup. You're telling me that several officers can't stop a woman with a knife? But officers do what they do best. They kill. Why? They've been trained to. Officers are not trained to protect and serve. They are trained to shoot first and ask questions later. Unless you're armed. And if you're armed and not black, because I point this out all the time. And yes, and Lady, you got it right. It is sad and effed up. And the double standard is crazy because I've always said this about officers. I've invited officers on the show all the time. And I've sat there and said the same thing. When will you guys admit that there is a problem with the blue out there? When will you guys admit that the way you police, that you don't police to protect and serve, you police to corral and intimidate? You don't do de-escalation tactics. You look for lethal options. You're not trying to get better with the community. You're just trying to make sure to keep the animals in. That's what you're trying to do. At the same time, I showed 2 stories. Now, granted, those 2 stories, one in Colorado, one in Los Angeles, doesn't change the fact that law enforcement is trained the same freaking ways. But we'll follow that story as it goes along because, as we usually see with body cam footage, they're going to go through it on their own because you got to make sure that there's not an oops problem. Because this is what I say, guys, literally about body cameras and law enforcement. You can tell when they've done nothing wrong. The body cam footage is it's almost immediate release when they've done nothing wrong. When they have done something wrong, or there's something that could be held to a point of contention in court, we just need to review the footage before we release it. We want to give full transparency, but we want to look at it first. That tells me that there's something there. But we will digress. We will check on it as it goes along. But going back to politics for a second. What did you say? Oh, someone posted the footage on IG. Oh, so the body cam footage is out there already. I gotta go find it. Thanks, Garrett. I gotta go find it. But going back to politics for a second, as we get to the end of the podcast, guys, this is the problem with politics as well. Lorraine Bobbert. I know. I don't really like talking about her. I think she's an airhead that got into Congress because she's cute and old white men have this Sarah Palin fantasy. Anyway, the fact that she's switching congressional districts because the district that she's switching to is more GOP friendly. Now, of course, a lot of people are asking, is it legal? Yes, it is. The reason why it's legal because there's not a law for it. So in her state of Colorado, in her district, she can do the paperwork. Here's the problem I have with this. When you have ran and won and you are a representative, you have to represent the area that you're in. Now, could you switch? Obviously you can. But do I think that you should sit out a while? Yes. I do think that there needs to be laws in politics that really need to change Congress. And I'll say it before I'll say it again. Of course, for what I would decide, most people wouldn't want to be a politician. If I said and said, if I could rewrite what a senator and a politician do, number one, I would put them on minimum wage. Watch how quickly minimum wage would change if they're working off of it. Ask a senator or a politician, oh, would you mind working $7.29 an hour? Hell no. But you're asking Americans to do it. They would immediately change that. I would also sit there and say that if you're a senator or politician, you cannot have stocks in any way, shape, or form. That goes for you and your immediate family. Because those guys have access to stocks information, to crops, to things of that nature. They get the information faster than Wall Street does. And you don't think somehow, some way, their stocks don't go up? They don't buy stocks here, drop stocks there, right before something happens, and they make out like a bandit? Again, I truly believe that if you're going to be in office, you can't own stocks. You work for the people. I also believe that for senators and politicians, that you should run on the same terms as the president. You run 2 terms. You run 2 consecutive terms, you got to sit one out before you run another one. The lifetime appointments have to stop. At the same time, if you put in a consecutive 2 terms, you're ensuring that Republicans, politicians will have to do the work. Because if not, well, you can easily kick them out. But again, the fact that she can do that does bring alarm, because that's like saying she's kind of pulling a LeBron James here. And I hate to say it to you, LeBron fans, let's be honest. LeBron James literally left Cleveland and went to Miami. Not because Cleveland wasn't going to get him what he wanted. Miami was better suited for him. Miami helped him win 3 titles. So what did he do? He went to Miami. Lorraine Bobbert is doing the same thing. She's going to a spot where she's guaranteed to win and stay in Congress. And yet at the same time, nobody is sitting there saying we need to have a law against that, or we need to have policies put in place against that. But I just thought that was weird, but I digress. The last story I got, guys, is really going to be related to the fact of the matter that I'm going to stress this again before we get to this part. The biggest group of voters for 2024 is undoubtedly going to be women. Because ladies, y'all had it rough. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Last year was rough. Roe versus Wade got overturned. Parts of affirmative action got gutted just because 4 Chinese students said they were being discriminated against in Ivy League schools, so they had to ruin it for everybody. At the same time, your wages haven't increased. Job opportunities haven't increased for you guys. Any type of federal funding that was kind of designated for you was halted because people were claiming that that's discriminatory. That being said, guys, going back to the whole idea of Roe versus Wade, because a lot of women out there, and I'll say this once and I'll say this again, we are pro-choice here. What a woman does with her body is her own effing business. The choices and consequences are ultimately hers. A group of old white men in a room cannot decide whether a woman should be a woman or be reduced to a broodmare. That's simply put. They don't have that decision. That being said, because Roe versus Wade was turned down, and so many conservative countries had already put in place trigger abortion laws to go in place, most women had to resort to traveling to different states. Most women had to go back to the dark days where, you did some things that could harm yourself and, more importantly, may harm your body for future use, because of the fact that abortions were no longer seen as legal. They even did abortion. They even did the abortion pill, the Plan B pill by mail, or the abortion pill by mail. And yet, at the same time, people had issues with that. Just like this next story, that more pregnant women are requesting to have abortion pills to have on hand. Because again, it's a mail order service that, because of the pill cost being $110, that women want access to abortion pills if they want them, as they should. I cannot tell you that right now, the GOP is trying to make that harder for women, which I never understood that about the GOP. Why is it that you say you love women in the same sense you say you love the armed forces, you love the men that sign up to protect this country, and yet the VA system is a mess. You love kids, yet the adoption center, the adoption system in the U.S. is a wreck. That more organized-based religions own adoption centers that turn away same-sex parents. Head Start is a thing in the past. Daycare assistance is almost gone. The GOP is also voting to make sure that free lunch disappears. Even in my home state of Tennessee, they turned down. In my home state of Tennessee, they turned down federal funding to fund free lunch for schools in Tennessee for the following school year. Tennessee legislature turned that down because they don't want to accept federal assistance. Imagine you are a parent that might not be in such a fortunate situation, that might be counting on those school lunches and breakfasts that your kids go to. Because contrary to popular belief, kids work and learn better on a full stomach. I mean, we know this. It's science. But going back to all this, guys, women are going to be the decisive voters going forward in next year. And the reason why I say that is because, again, the GOP has ticked you all off. And I can't think of a reason for a woman, much less a person of color, much less an LGBTQ plus person, would turn around and vote Republican. I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to influence you guys in any way. I'm just saying, from my logic, I don't see it. I don't see the reason why you vote Republican. And I know a lot of people out there, the Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro types. What are you going to do? Vote Democrat? I'm saying, as I've always said before, look into the candidates that represent your values best and vote for them. Simple and plain. Or better yet, you can run yourself. If you haven't learned from this idiocy we call the 118th Congress, that a bunch of idiots were able to get voted in, and you might consider yourself above average or average enough, if idiots can get into Congress, why can't you? And that's not an insult. I'm just saying, that's not an insult. That's me telling you guys, if you think that you can make a difference, whether it's at the federal level or the local level, go ahead and do it. I highly recommend it. But above all else, be informed. Because if you haven't noticed, they are trying harder to make it. They're trying to make it harder for women. They're trying to make it harder for people of color. They're trying to make it harder for LGBTQ plus people. The only people that aren't being oppressed, but swear they're being oppressed right now, are the napkins. They know who they are. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our feel-good segment, guys, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you use your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Hump Day, Wednesday. We're just trying to put some smiles on some faces and hopefully leave you with a good smile on your face. And before I do that, what do you say, Kira? Because you're not a white woman that still believes white men are their princess in shining armor. True. Can't argue that. But we're going to go ahead and move along with this one, guys. Again, I thought I found something fun because as a father who always thought that he would have twins, I thought this was odd because, of course, New Year's was just a few days ago. And this woman, I'm not sure what it's called. I forgot to look up what this condition's called, that you have a baby on the 31st. I'm sorry, she had twins, by the way. That's the best way I put that. She had twins, one on the 31st and one on the 1st. But I thought it was a feel-good story. Here it goes.
It was cool pushing out a baby while everyone's counting down, and it was like they had a birthday party. Yeah.
They're doing great. They're doing really, really good. Eating well, all signs are looking good.
I'm grateful everyone was healthy and things went pretty smoothly. So that's like the best thing you can ask for, especially since they were a little bit early and everything. That they're doing fine and I'm fine. So just happy about that overall.
Well, definitely mazel tov to them. I forgot what that's called. Was it Irish twins? I'm sorry. That's going to bug me because I forgot what happens when twins are born. They're born, but they're born on different days, and I forgot what it's called. But anyway, happy to hear that both those twin boys are happy and safe and healthy. So mazel tov to that happy couple. So that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Before we do get out of here, some shameless plugging as usual. Of course, for myself, you can find me BlackBox447 on all the socials. I usually do reviews on everything, including gym stuff, because I still try to keep in shape. Got to, because a 9-month-old will run you around. I know for a lot of y'all who are parents, I know I'm testifying right now, but I'm just saying, my 9-month-old, I love my son to death, but thank God he's not mobile yet. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. I'm just gonna be honest with you, but I gotta stay in shape. But again, definitely check me out there, guys. Of course, the link at the bottom is going to make that just a wee bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, which again is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. that you're currently watching right now. Of course, this Friday will be my video game show, Get Bit, will also be at 7 p.m. And my other podcast, Off Limits Podcast, I am bringing that back. I know it has been an extreme amount of time since we've covered that, but I am definitely rethinking how that's going and reforming it up. I cannot wait to get back into that, but definitely check out what I've done before. And again, I want everybody's comments. Just like you saw Kira, just like you saw Tafari and others on there, I want your comments. I want to be able to speak to you guys. I want to keep this conversation going. Why? Because that's what we need. We need the conversation. We need the unity. We need to have that level of informity. That's what I'm trying to get out there. That's what I want you guys to do. I want you to be informed. I want you guys to know what's going on in your world. I want you to know what's going on in your city, your state, not just the federal level. Because if you really think about it, you can make that much more of a difference if you simply know. Because once you know, you have no choice but to act. That's just being honest. That's how we are, especially us as people. Once we know, we act and we move and we hopefully move forward. But again, hopefully I've done that, inspired you guys, especially with the 2024 presidential nomination coming up. But we'll definitely cover that. But one other thing I do want to say, guys, because again, as I've said before, I am part of others who are watching this and that also join me there. We're all part of a conglomerate because you guys have seen Amazon, you've seen Amazon Prime, you've seen Hulu, you've seen Netflix. We know when in the world of streaming, it's always to be one app after another. Content disappears, it comes back, prices increase, and if you're like me, you're tired of it. And honestly, I have actually joined something along with others that I think is great, that I literally think it will literally be the new Netflix. I am talking about blurredstation.com. Now, if you don't know what blurredstation.com is, simply put, go to your browser and go there. What blurredstation.com is it is the new Netflix. It is the next Netflix. I think it's Netflix 2.0, but better. The reason why, it has comics, it has entertainment, like Under the Horizon. It has, as you can see there, Blood Emblem. It has genetics. It has Air Force One, Unity. I could keep going down the list, but it has action. It has movies. It has comics. It has a show, Issue One, that is actually hosted by a man I highly respect, that is doing something revolutionary, getting a lot of indie artists their first comic book published. Now, for me being a comic book head, I love watching that. But anyway, I want to turn you on to this because, again, I truly believe this is the next bed. This is the new hotness, the freshest wave coming out there. And if you'll do me a favor, go to Join Now. If you go to Join Now, guys, it's going to take this next page. I would certainly appreciate it. I know my friends certainly appreciate it if you go to Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. Once you are there, it is basically going to take you, it's going to ask you who the Affinity member you want to select. Now, The offending member you can select can be anyone because like I said, it's all about supporting the movement. And also it helps us out too. So if you select Chris Fury, Kira at Roomful of Birds, we'll be watching myself, Black Spartan, Tafari at Tafari TV, Navy at Navy Montel, or even Laney at Geek by Heart. Whoever you select, we all would appreciate that. And the offending membership is $10.99. Why the offending membership? Well, because $10.99 is a wonderful price. You know why? Because $10.99, you can actually get a streaming service and still get food. I don't know about you, that's a plus. But with also that being said, guys, the reason why it's offending membership, because again, have you ever wanted to own a piece of Netflix or Hulu or Paramount Plus, or dare I say Warner Brothers, which I think now is Max? But if you ever wanted to own them, you have to pony up the money to buy a share. You have to go through E-Trade, or you have to go through Fidelity, or whoever you do your stocks to. But doing all that gets you what? 1-2 shares after an assload of money you've paid for. Well, in this case, with Blur Station, paying 36 months at $10.99 gives you the opportunity to own a piece of Blur Station. And I don't know about you guys, but that is way easier than going on to Fidelity or E-Trade and trying to figure out how much more stock do you need to get in order to be able to get onto that. So check out BlurStation.com. Again, guys, go to the Blur's Eye View Offending membership. Select any influence partner that you see there. We would certainly appreciate that. And enjoy the content that's there, because there is so much, and especially with Hyundai Horizon, because if I told you the age of the young girl whose talent is miles, and I do mean miles, and she is so, I mean, aside from the fact she's just freaking adorable, she's very talented. And that just goes to show you how much more is out there beyond Blur Station if you simply give it a chance. That's all I'm asking. But yeah, aside from that, guys, like I said before, as we're wrapping this all up, the whole goal of How the Frack We Got Here is staying informed. We are not trying to literally tell you what to think or what to do. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a lot of perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to change. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as a National Cybersecurity Director, electing our first Black man as one of the leading armed forces of the Air Force. You know, thanks to Tupperville finally getting the shit together. All great things. We don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing politicians for the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here? Again, guys, thank you all for watching. I hope I have influenced you guys. I hope I have informed you guys. I hope I have encouraged you guys, because that's my mission. And as long as that's being done, my mission is complete. Take care of yourselves and each other, guys. Peace.